How's it going, everybody? Thanks for coming to my talk. This is really cool. This is my first virtual conference of the year, or possibly ever, if we're not counting like webinars and things I've done that were private. We're going to be talking today about the maker response to COVID-19. I'm Johnny Christmas. Maybe you know me. I'm a trainer here at GRIMM. And training isn't going too well right now, given the current situation. I was generally doing in-person trainings, and those kind of had the kibosh put on them. We are migrating to virtual trainings. If you or your company is interested, hit me up and we can talk about that offline. In the meantime, I'm kind of doing a whatever else thing at GRIMM. We are hiring, especially in the AppSec positions. So if you're an AppSec person, or perhaps a dev with really heavy experience in web communications and are security minded, maybe that's something we can use here as well. So again, hit me up. But more epically, I am the guy you see here in all the news articles. A few years ago, some of you may recall when the TSA master keys were leaked and someone started 3D printing them. You may have seen that someone, a name associated with that a lot was Johnny Christmas. I'm the same Johnny Christmas. I do 3D printing. That's my jam. I've been doing it an extremely long time. I hate it a lot. It is an infuriating hobby, and yet I keep having to break this thing out and do it once again and use my powers for good. And that's what I've been doing lately, and that's what we're going to talk about today. What's going on right now? I think, I had a really cool GIF there, but it's not going to work in this context. Oh, by the way, what's going on in this slide deck is really neat. What you see going on in the background is, I think I could thumb that way, is a live feed from my 3D printer. I do often have it streaming on Twitch, where I hang out and answer questions about 3D printing. It's a Twitch affiliate. I have one of the few affiliated printers on Twitch, which means you can subscribe to it. All the money I get through Twitch does go back towards COVID-19 related stuff. A lot of it lately has been to buy materials for the purposes of printing things. Right now, it is printing a huge stack of face shield headbands. I'll talk about those a bit later, but just in case you were wondering what this like crazy distracting background is, that's actually going on in the other room here right now. I thought it'd make a cool backdrop for what we're talking about today. What's going on right now overall in the US? I don't think I need to go into super long detail about the US's very, very poor response and poor preparation for a medical pandemic like this. That's all the news talks about every day. So we're all very well aware that effectively no medical systems in the US or any sort of systems really were prepared for a mass loss like this. The hospitals, all the medical facilities did not have the personal protective equipment that they needed for such massive amounts of turnaround going on. As you may know, a lot of medical PPE is one-time use, and then it needs to be sterilized or it's disposed of. When you're dealing with having a huge amount of patients per medical personnel, you end up cranking through tons of PPE very fast, and these hospitals, et cetera, ran out of that PPE very fast. And so a lot of people say like, well, isn't this a manufacturer's market then? Can't they just make a killing by cranking out tons more PPE and get things rolling? And it's not that easy. Mass production is something that you plan for. It's a balance of buying raw materials ahead of time when the price is right, making sure you have that inventory of raw materials when you need it, i.e. for the next season. And sometimes the season is just next quarter. Sometimes that season is next year. So a lot of these manufacturers can't get the raw materials they need to increase production for 3 months to a year. And they're literally sitting there with their machines off because they have nothing to feed into them. All they want to do is make PPE, and they just can't. And so that led to this kind of explosion of people in the rapid prototyping world to say, hey, what can I do to help? And rapid prototyping is the thing that you're probably most familiar with 3D printing, as you're seeing up here. There are in-home CNC machines, there are laser cutters. You've seen all this stuff. It's things where you can more or less put them in your home, depending on the size of them. There are some exceptionally large ones that are being run out of hackerspaces or R&D plants, and hit go and have it crank something out. And so, like, why was this a fallback? Why aren't we 3D printing things to begin with? Why does 3D printing fall under the realm of rapid prototyping versus production? And it's for the reasons that you can see all here. 3D printing sucks. It's great, and then it's not great at the same time. It's especially when you're dealing with consumer grade things, it doesn't work well. The very nature of how it operates, by melting a filament and putting a layer of it down, and then trying to control how slowly or quickly that initial layer cools while applying a next layer on top of it, has a lot of problems. It's affected by a lot of environmental factors. You know, you have to keep the room a constant temperature. You have to make sure that there's no airflow around the printer. That combined with gravity, you know, the fact that you're stacking things and making certain shapes means that if you don't have anything supporting where you're printing over the air, you get a lot of sagging and drooping. And there's certain things that just can't be printed because of the way they're shaped. It's not this perfect futuristic magic technology that a lot of people think it is, where you just hit go and then, oh man, now I got a coffee cup because I printed it. Yeah, I can print a coffee cup. The coffee cup I print will not be medically safe. I'm probably not printing it out of a medically safe material. It'll have little grooves in it all the way up because the layers and bacteria sits inside those grooves and builds up, and it's very difficult to clean because there's about a 0.1 millimeter space in between those. And how do you get into those? There's a lot of these problems involved in 3D printing that when you're talking about rapid prototyping, where you say, hey, I'm designing something that's gonna be for injection molding, but I don't want to design it, send it off to the injection mold company, pay 10 grand to have a die cast, get my first practice run, get it back and go, oh no, we have to make this valve bigger, that valve smaller, and this doesn't support itself right. We need to make the material thicker on this side or something. Now I got to pay another 10 grand to practice again. 3D printing absolutely solved that problem, and extremely affordably. You know, now you can get a little 3D printer in your house for a couple $100. You can get something the size of what we're doing for under $1,000, if you can find them at least. And it's aside from what I just mentioned, is really difficult to make durable goods. Even if you're printing in a really strong plastic like ABS, you can do 100% fill and get pretty darn durable. But if you're filling all of the spaces inside there 100% with plastic, the length of time it takes is just absolutely insane. And you're still limited to the inherent durability of the types of plastic that you're able to use in a 3D printer, which isn't everything. It's a lot of things, but it's definitely not every kind of plastic under the sun. What we're doing for medical stuff is we're using a specific type of plastic called PETG, PETG. It's a little more expensive, but it's what you see in pretty much all medical grade plastics in the hospitals. It's what water bottles are made out of, and it's because it doesn't break down in water or anything really. It's non-toxic.
I'll have to go get a beer.
Most importantly, it can be sterilized using the methods that hospitals use to sterilize things, you know, because they don't just rub something down with rubbing alcohol and then hope for the best. They have autoclaves. They have incredibly hot steam that they use, and different chemicals that they spray on these plastics. And so we had to make sure that these plastics aren't going to break down or just melt in, you know, the autoclaves. And so that's been a huge problem. And again, like I mentioned, 3D printing is just insanely slow. What you're seeing in the background here is I'm printing a stack of 25 headbands These are, I'll break one off. These come apart relatively easy. These are for face shields, and this has to get cleaned up a little, but you put these on. I really like this design because it doesn't require an elastic band on the back, like some of them do, that just holds it on your head like that. And then it's got these little nubs here that a 3-hole punch can punch clear plastic with, and it snaps into the face, and then you end up with a face shield on the front. And it's working. We're doing it. It's actually helping. Using these stacks, I can crank out one in about 40-45 minutes, and so that times 20 or however tall the stack I want to make is how long it takes. But then even when you think about that, like 45 minutes for one of these is fast. For, you know, if you talk to everybody who's doing it, 40 to 45 minutes is about the best you can get. It's 1 an hour. That's not great. That's really freaking slow, and that's the best we can do. But we're doing it, and the hospitals are just insanely appreciative. And even if we can't print in this medical grade PET-G material, even if all we have is PLA, they'll still take it. They're desperate, because there's a lot of argument initially of like, oh, hey, well, the National Institute of Health hasn't approved this type of plastic and this design for use in medical facilities. And at the same time, the doctor's going, we don't care. We have nothing. We have nothing. I will take something that might work versus nothing. And we're not just making these face shields either. That's one of the few things you can do with a 3D printer. Sure, we need lots of stuff made for hospitals, medical facilities, first responders that aren't 3D printable, that are made out of cloths and other fibrous materials. I'm going to bring Patrick in a little bit to talk about what he's been doing on his end with those things. But the face shields by far are the most common and famous thing you see out there. This is what the hospitals are super desperate for, and they're absolutely loving it. And I love seeing all the pictures of the nurses and doctors and everybody saying like, hey, we're using them. Thank you so much for doing it. Thank you goes a long way towards keeping us cranking these out and sending them around. So the question comes up, like, how do we coordinate an entire nation of people with 3D printers? And I'm talking people like me. People like me are just some dude who happens to have a 3D printer in his office, in his basement. Literally, I have one, and it's just me in my house. How do we get, you know, the tens of thousands of those people to all coordinate and not just say, hey, everybody, print some shields and get them to your hospital, but say, print these shields. And then when a new model of shield comes out, or a new method of designing them, when somebody goes, hey, if you stack them like this, I could turn this light down a little bit. If you stack them like this, you know, you don't have to babysit your printer so much. Things like that. How do you let everyone know? And that's been the problem. There are thousands of groups all trying to do this same level of coordination, all trying to be the one group, your central source for everything. And that unfortunately leads to this problem of diaspora, where not everyone gets communicated to, nobody knows what to do. Information goes missing because one group may have some information that another group doesn't. A trillion Slacks have been spun up, often with 20 people in them. I have seen Google form after Google form after Google form of, hey, do you have a 3D printer? Do you have PPE that you're making? Or do you need PPE? Fill out this form and we'll get back to you. And I have filled out all of those forms, and I have only ever gotten one group to get back to me. So like you have, you know, forget me, you have hospital workers filling out these forms thinking they're going to get something. You know, they're desperate for help, going, please, yes, we need PPE. Cool, there's a form to fill out, and they're going to send us something, and then just radio silence, because perhaps nobody's even checking that form anymore. We have people who have one 3D printer who are buying 100 kilograms of filament, which is a lot. Like 1 kilogram of filament can print about 20, 40, 60, 80, about 100 of these. You have people hoarding tons of filament, but because of the inherent slow speed of 3D printers, they're just not getting through it that fast. And in the meantime, it's getting really hard to find, and it's getting really expensive. And Amazon doesn't consider it an essential item. So if you're ordering from Amazon, you're going to wait a week or more before any of it shows up at your house. They're producing PPE which shouldn't be used. They're making it out of ABS, which is known to cause skin problems in certain individuals, and you just don't want to, to risk that. They're printing full-face respirators, which you absolutely shouldn't be doing because they don't work. That's just a bad idea all the way around. They're just saying like, hey, people need PPE. I got a 3D printer. Somebody made a file. I'm going to get to work. And they're wasting all this material on something that is going to get to a hospital and just have to be thrown in the garbage because it can't be used. See, like the title of this talk, they're just shooting first and asking questions later, which I understand there's an emergency and you have to respond, but the road to hell and all that. Certain groups have used their influence and their knowledge to kind of push forward and try to do what they can to get everyone coordinated and get the right information in the right hands and get things moving in a proper manner. Two 3D printing companies, Prusa and 3D Virkistan, put out their own designs for these face shields and moved towards getting the NIH to actually approve their use in hospitals, which was a huge deal because a lot of people were not printing anything because they were saying, nope, the designs aren't used. I'm not going to print them. I'm just going to sit here and wait. The NIH, the National Institute of Health, has been certifying designs for use and has gone as far to actually stand up a 3D printing design repo on their website where they're saying, hey, here's designs for PPE that people have created. And I'll show you those in a bit, where they go as far as saying like, we have certified these designs. We haven't certified these designs. That just means we haven't gotten to it yet. It doesn't mean that they're not useful. So still take a look at them. People have finally gotten around to making concise, shareable PDFs and infograms or infographics that have the information you need in them. And again, I'll have a lot of links to this stuff towards the end. That have information where you can just say, look at it and you go, cool, got it, I'm gonna get to work. They realize like that's what the internet needs. That's the way social media works now. It's all about, can you share one image with me that's gonna give me all the info I need because I'm not gonna read anymore. That's been especially useful in the non-nerd space. The people who are making stuff that isn't just throw it at a computer and tell the computer to do it. The cloth, the wearables that anyone can make. What's really cool about these wearables, and we're talking shoe covers, hospital bonnets, full body coverings, and just the masks, just the face covers that the government is telling literally everyone to wear so that if you're asymptomatic, you don't accidentally spread the disease because you think you don't have it. Those things, real easy for anyone relatively to make. Especially since they don't have to look good. You're not making a suit for somebody. You're making something that's literally the perfect possible end result is still a frumpy piece of clothing. So if you want to learn to sew, now is a great time because chances are your first or second thing you make is going to be super useful. And it doesn't matter how it looks because even the best one is going to look crappy because that's like PPE isn't supposed to be fashionable. It's supposed to be functional. So let's talk about where we're at right now with this. We're getting better. Stuff is getting centralized. A lot of the flack and annoyances are getting pushed off to the wayside. Hacker spaces, schools, universities, libraries are using the large format or the large number of 3D printers that they have or laser cutters or whatever to crank out lots of stuff very quickly. We've had retail outlets donating the materials that they had in stock to these places so they can have the materials they need to avoid the same problem that mass production is having. Most recently, Micro Center, a company I absolutely love, donated all of their material or a lot of their material to Linus Tech Tips, he's a YouTube tech star, and he bought or possibly had donated from Prusa a ton of Prusa 3D printers. If you check out his channel, he's got a great video on it. And Micro Center drop shipped him just like a massive pallet of material to use for them. So that's really cool. We have some manufacturers selling professionally made PPE, like actual PPE manufacturers, trying to sell it at cost. But we're running into a problem there with they don't know who to sell it to, and the people who need it don't know how to get it from them. We also have this problem, this insane problem that's especially huge in for-profit hospitals, which is a surprising number of them, where the hospitals won't accept donated PPE. And I'm going to say this really slow because it's fucking insane. The hospitals will not accept donated PPE because they're not able to charge for the use of it. They're not able to put a line item for that face shield onto the invoice for the patient. And so because they don't have any means in place for handling that sort of thing, they just go, no, we can't deal with this, get this out of here. And so that's led to a lot of us, sorry about the ambulance here. That's led to a lot of us literally going to the back doors of hospitals, going to the back doors of medical facilities and directly handing boxes of PPEs to the medical staff who are crying out that they need this stuff. There are doctors and nurses in hospitals who need this PPE, going to their administrators, and their administrators go, well, we tried to buy some and the manufacturer said it's going to be about 8 weeks, so hang in there. And then they say, what about all the donated stuff? And they go, we don't really have, we're not set up to handle processing donations like that, so we can't do that here. But get back in there with your bare face and good luck. And so we're literally handing the stuff through back doors to medical personnel who are desperate and super thankful for it, and that's just, it's insane to me. In the meantime, the community has been making really cool tweaks to the designs and things, and showing things that work better, like stacking these was someone's idea. So even though like we've all been working from home and we've had the time to babysit these printers, being able to hit go, and this takes about a day on my end, just to every morning hit go and come back tomorrow and have it be ready is just super cool. So aside from 3D printing, I'm going to pass over to Patrick real quick, who's going to show you some of the cool stuff he's been working on that's not 3D printed and talk about the problems he's run into with that. Patrick, can you do that somehow? Hey, there he is. Hi.
Sure. I take a little offense that you say this can't look fashionable.
Well, you know, fashion is subjective.
There you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, was that Johnny?
What do you tell us what you got going on there?
Yeah. So like Johnny was saying, it's not all 3D printing. So I actually work for a local fire department, and we didn't have any gowns. So one of the first things we started out with was how to make a gown to get out to first responders. Again, it's a resource and supply chain issue. We started with trying to find some Tyvek. All the hardware stores were sold out. Their warehouses were sold out. So we started asking on local neighborhood groups for people to donate some. And that worked. It was really crinkly. It definitely was not a fashion statement, especially if you don't like Tyvek written down your side. We then moved on to temp material. So this is ripstop nylon. It's a lot nicer. And we actually added some hoods on them. We worked with a local clothing manufacturer, and they developed a design for us that we can then share out. So they helped us make some improvements. Then, as Johnny mentioned, there's also the caps, the surgical caps, which are nice. And then, masks are definitely one of the first and easy things that people can make. Though, again, supply chain is interesting. Elastic is getting hard to find. People are even going so far as to scavenge bungee cords that have the braided elastic inside, and using pipe cleaners for their metal for the nose bridge. Again, more manufacturers are starting to pitch in and starting to get a little coordinated. I saw a post just yesterday that One of the aerospace manufacturers is actually shipping out free nose bridges to people sewing masks. So some of it is coming along, but that coordination part is definitely the big stumbling block. The other, Johnny's working on 3D printing stuff. I also found plans for doing it with a laser cutter for making the face shields. I will start printing those as soon as the PETG shows up. But again, finding sheets of PETG is hard. All the local manufacturers that make that kind of thing are sold out. Their warehouses are empty. I did find one place that's willing to send it to me in a truckload of 8-foot by 4-foot sheets. So I'm going to have some fun cutting those up to fit into the laser cutter to then start making some face shields out of. But then it's finding a person to take them. The supply chains changes so much. We were making the gowns for the fire department, and just as we were getting ready, they received a box magically from the Fed of 50 of them. And so then suddenly the demand signal went down, and they don't want to be hoarding. So they'll need some soon, but they don't know if they need these right now. And there's just that whole, some people being overly polite about what they take and other people's being greedy about what they take, that makes balancing it out tricky right now.
All right, cool. Thanks, Patrick. That, yeah, that covers a lot of my griefs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
we've got, in fact, I'll talk about that right now. We've got just like 3 minutes left. Let me see if I can crank through this. Patrick, there you go, cool. If you want to help, and you should want to help, that should be all you want right now, is to help, because you can help. And if you want to help, here's some ways you can do it. Here's the best ways I've found. These certainly aren't the only ways. Like I said, there's a trillion groups out there, and it's a mess. Do what you can. Get Us PPE, the hashtag Get Us PPE on Twitter has been really good, and they're at getusppe.org. They're the only place that I've seen consistently responding to their not only their requests for, like, if you need PPE, but also they're the ones who get back to me when I say, hey, I have PPE. They set me up with local groups who are doing pickups. Someone comes to my house and picks up just these bands, and they take them to someone else who only has the material to cut the face shields, the actual clear plastic, and they cut the face shields and snap them into the bands, and then someone picks it up from them and takes it to a hospital nearby. And that happens through email. Like, that's how low tech that setup is, and that's all we have here right now. And I'm in Chicago. Like, we should have better than that, but that's all we got. The masks for Doc Slack, I have that URL. Oh, and by the way, I'll have all these slides on my GitHub right after the talk, github.com/JohnnyXmas, and I'll send a tweet out so you can find them, and you can check all these links that way, or take a screenshot, because computers. The masks for Doc Slack, again, it's a mess, but there's a ton of information. Get in there, join the applicable channels for what you're trying to do. Look at all the pinned posts. The pinned posts are going to have 95% of the information you need. God help you if you have a question. It's a mess in there. It's a nightmare, but everyone in there is trying to help, and they'll try to help you. So just go in there with an open mind and accept that everyone is stressed out and angry and frustrated and trying to do this. All the Slacks are like that. All the groups are like that. I have, anyway, the 3D printing repos at the NIH, there's the link there. Make Masks 2020 has the cloth mask making guides and some other fabric material, what do you call them, patterns for if you're sewing. If you're not a 3D printer but you want to sew, you can use for the mask coverings that literally everyone on earth needs, like the retail workers near you even need these masks. You can make them out of t-shirts, pending there's a little bit of stretchiness to them. Like, you have materials in your house probably that you can make these out of. All you need is the patterns, some scissors, and some in a sewing kit. And then failing that, like, get on the horn, ask around the community, check for your local community Reddit groups, the neighbor apps that are out there. Do you have a hackerspace nearby? You might be the one who has to jumpstart this thing in your community. It might be you who has to start coordinating these people. I guarantee you there's tons of people around your community who want to help, who just, like, nobody's bothered to jumpstart it, especially if you're not in a huge city like I am. If you're in a small town, like your small town probably still has a hospital nearby who needs stuff, Your small town probably has a general store that with people who need masks. You might have to do a little work. Please do it. Don't be put off by the fact that nobody in your neighborhood's doing it and going, well, guess I can't help. That just means that it's gonna have to be you. It's work, but it's so incredibly rewarding. I'm so glad I'm doing this, and I'm so glad so many of you jumped in on this. Please keep going. Even though we have cities talking about opening up, there is this problem isn't going to end this year. This production problem, this helping out medical facilities isn't going to end this year. They're still going to need it long after most of us are immune to the disease. So please get in when you can, start helping us. And thank you all for listening. There's my GitHub right there. It's Ấ I'm going to put the slides up right now, and enjoy the rest of GRIMMCon. I'll see you guys later.
If you're able to hang on, we still have some questions we can answer here for a few minutes.
Oh, absolutely. I just saw it was 3 o'clock and I didn't want to.
Yeah, so we got 15 minutes in between, so we can do a few questions, and then
Wow.
Casey Ellis will be joining us next on disclose.io. So first up, how do you print the stack? The mid layers are supports only. How is that designed?
So the stack is, it's just a stack. Let me see if I can turn my light down here to show them. So it is just a full, like it's solid on both sides piece, and used a program, and I can't remember the name of it, and I don't have it on this laptop. It's like Lua or Luda or something. It's if you join the Masks for Docs Slack, it's one of the pin posts in the 3D printing channel. There's a program where somebody also wrote a walkthrough of how to stack models in 3D printing, and it just it puts the slightest gap between them. I want to say it's 1/10 of a millimeter, if that, and that's all it needs. And so you can see they are still stuck together, but they come apart relatively easily. I do have to put a little plastic shim in there just to make sure I don't tear them in the little harder spots. Like they don't pop right apart. If you have a dual extruder printer, you can actually print one. You do one in PETG, one in PLA, because a lot of places will still take PLA if that's all you got. And if you do that, go PETG, PLA, they pop right apart, and it's really cool. But I don't have a dual extruder printer. In the meantime, if you don't want to even mess with that and you just want to print a stack of these specifically, those STLs are up in the Masks for Docs Slack as well and floating around the internet. If you're having trouble finding them, I can send them to you directly if you send me a DM too. Yeah, that's how that goes.
Do you have the STL on your Git?
I don't. I could. You know what? I'll put it in there. That's what I'll do. I'll put the STLs that I'm using in the talk decks of the slide decks folder for this talk. So yeah, that's a good idea. They'll just be there.
And in order to consolidate something like this, why don't you guys coordinate with Thingiverse, and people can subscribe to the project and get notifications on upgrades or tips and advice?
Yeah, that's a great idea. There are some of these models on Thingiverse. I'm on Thingiverse. So what? That's the problem, is not everyone is on Thingiverse. And then when something is on Thingiverse, how do you let the entire planet know that this is the place to go for this information? Because we're dealing with a problem that doesn't have centralized authority, anyone can stand themselves up as a centralized authority, which means everyone is. And everyone has, there's been 3 to 4 versions of this put out now. And I still see people posting the first version of this, which isn't very structurally sound. And people are printing those still. And it's like, geez, it's like if everyone went on GitHub and forked everything and then started only sharing their fork as the authoritative source. It's a mess. It's one of the big problems we're dealing with right now. And there are central authorities. There's the NIH and the National Institute of Health, but I didn't know to go to them until somebody in the Slack told me that they were even a central authority for this. I wasn't even sure what the NIH even really did until I started working on this. So that's the problem. The why don't you just do is the problem we're all facing. Next question.
All right, gentlemen. Well, if you have more questions or you want to have talk with Patrick or Johnny, they will be in the expert track in Discord. Gentlemen, thank you for the talk, as well as your contribution to helping make us all safer and get through this pandemic.
Thanks for letting us rant on this. It's been really cool and fun. Thanks, GRIMMCon, for hosting us. See you guys in Discord.
Yeah.